I'm Amy Kardash, the president of the Entrust Center for Theological Schools, and I trust you had a full, encouraging, engaging first day yesterday. Thank you for that. If this Pathways gathering were a race, we'd be at the halfway mark. And the halfway mark is always a good time to check in with ourselves. So how are we feeling? Okay, that's not good. How are we feeling? Good? We're feeling good? Great. Everything moving at the right pace? Adequate fueling? Tech support holding up? That's a shameless plug for the app, where you'll find all the information for the agenda for today. Are your teammates feeling in rhythm with one another? There's a lot to learn over the course of a race, and that learning influences the next leg. And so we invite you to think about, what do you want to get out of today, the second leg? What are your goals? And we're going to keep the pace going and continue the focus on peer learning today. And we're going to begin in a little bit of a different way, and we're going to give you some insights into our unique peer learning community, which is that of coordination. So the teams from ATS and the Entrust Center are going to be facilitated by our colleague, Matt Hufman. And we're going to talk a little bit about some signs of impact and change that we've experienced through coordination. And we're going to be asking you to participate throughout. So I know each of you have a phone or a tablet or a laptop. So in the next few minutes, if you'll access that, because we're going to have you engage throughout the session. And then we'll continue the peer learning later this morning, focusing on those sessions that'll be about data, those analyzing the race sessions, or the strength training sessions where you'll work on capacity building, and the cross-training sessions where you'll be assessing gaps. And then after lunch, as Joanne teased out yesterday, we're going to move into peer learning around your strengths or your superpowers. And so that you can share those with others, but that you can also learn and leverage one another's strengths. And then there's focused team time and a closing plenary followed by dinner. So my invitation to you this morning is pace yourself and consider what you're going to need to go the distance today. And before I turn things over to Matt, it's my pleasure to invite my colleague, Frank Yamada, Executive Director at ATS, to come up and offer some words of welcome.
I'm Frank Yamada. I am the 6th Executive Director of the Association of Theological Schools and the Commission on Accrediting. ATS's mission is to promote the improvement and enhancement of theological schools to the benefit of communities of faith and the broader public. I wanted to bring welcome again to the second day of the Pathways for Tomorrow conference. And it's good to see all of you, and it seems like you got some good team time in yesterday and some good rest and some good nourishment. I also wanted to give some Thanksgiving. Wanted first to the Lilly Endowment. This is staggering to me. This is such a moment for theological schools. I know there's a lot of transitions, there's a lot of change, there's a lot of challenges in our environment. But it is possible, if not probable, by the end of this calendar year, that the Lilly Endowment will have granted to ATS accredited schools and supporting organizations over $500 million to stimulate the faithful changes that all of you. Yeah, I think that's worthy of applause. I was doing some quick math. And it's if we were just to take all of those resources and programs that are supported by those resources and kind of distribute that evenly among all of the just over 280 member schools, that is about $2 million of resource for change and faithful change to each school. That's amazing. So our thanks to the Lilly Endowment, to the leadership there in the religion division, to Chris Coble, who is not able to be here, also to Tito Madrazo for his faithful partnership in this coordination program. I also wanted to give thanks on behalf of the member schools of ATS to the team, the coordination team. A lot of work goes into putting on these conferences. And before we hear from them on the panel, I think it's really appropriate that we offer some Thanksgiving to the coordination team who has fostered and supported your learning communities within this coordination program. So thank you to the ATS and Intrust team. Theological schools are in the middle of what I've been calling the Great Transition. I outlined 4 elements of this transition, which correspond to the 4 strategic priorities, or the current 4 strategic priorities of ATS's current strategic plan. The first, leadership transitions. Boy, have we heard about these in the last day and a half. We are seeing an unprecedented number of transitions in the senior leadership in theological schools. So between 2017 and 2024, over 600 transitions among the CEOs and CAOs at ATS member schools. Second, schools are seeking, not always successfully, to innovate their business and organizational models. I think this is clear indication that the current financial and organizational models of theological schools and theological education are not sustainable. The third, schools are adapting their educational models. There has been a creative burst within the last 5 or 6 years from theological schools with multiple modalities, including online education in many forms, competency-based models, and a Pentecost-like proliferation of theological education in Spanish, Korean, Chinese, and other languages. I think such a creative burst is also unprecedented in the history of the association. This is our way of thinking of how schools are trying to bend their historical missions to meet this moment. And the fourth, schools are serving an increasingly diverse student population whom the founders of a seminary could not have imagined this at the school's founding. These are big transitions that are happening among us folks. So again, our Thanksgiving to the Lilly Endowment for a project such as this, an initiative such as this in the Pathways for Tomorrow. And we're going to hear from a panel in just a couple of minutes that will explore the impact of Pathways on theological education as schools seek to proactively and creatively foster faithful change as they live into their diverse missions. So we have a panel of from the leadership of our coordination program who will engage this topic.
So I think along with some of the things that Joanne and Chris talked about as it relates to tensions, or maybe those tensions that become the showstoppers, right? Or moments of like pause and reconsider. One of the things you said, Chris, stood out to me and related to enrollment and what are we counting? And I think about what are we counting versus what counts? Mm-hmm. And I think we're good at counting things, and we do need to count things like head count, right? And track that. But if we're not also tying that to things like retention rate, graduation rate, placement rate, long-term retention in the ministry rate, to be able to assess how we're doing or how we're supporting, I think that's a particular area where, and we know that in the proposals that KPIs and metrics and the ability to assess were weaker areas. And so I think those are areas that all of you have been working on. And I think those are the particular areas of importance for executive leaders and boards to be able to see like those dashboard items. We talked a little bit in our workshop yesterday about dashboards and how do you create something that's good for the board, but also good for the institution to know, like, how do we know if we're doing well? And so that what are we counting versus what counts? I think another area is that can be an area of tension is supply versus demand. So I'll go back to what I said earlier about in phase 1, so many of you invested in market research or your own means of listening and having focus groups and surveying to understand like what are the needs and how do we meet them. And I think that's the right approach to research and thinking about supply and demand. I also think that we're really good at saying, we have something that we've created that we're supplying Now we need someone to do some research to figure out who's going to buy it. And that's not market research, right? That's us creating something and then trying to find the communities that might want them. And so I think as it relates to where leadership comes in is that sense of, are we really clear about who our markets are and what those markets need from us? And I think a lot of that is looking at what students are seeking. So whether that's degree or non-degree or different types of modality. And are we ready for them? How's our readiness to take on those students? And particularly if we're serving an ever increasingly diverse community, but also to be mindful of student readiness for what we offer. So both sides of that, I think, are part of that supply and demand. And then maybe the last thing is sustainability versus preservation. And so the question about, when we talk about sustainability, and I feel like we talk about it a lot, you talk about it a lot, you hear about it a lot, you think about, well, what is it that we're trying to sustain? Are we trying to sustain our mission, our space, our institution, our programs? And just to be really clear in our conversations about what are we trying to sustain? And does that match, what we're focused on in the executive leader space and certainly in the board space?
So you all can see the richness of this conversation, right? I hope. Few nods from what I can see. We are about 10 minutes out from wrapping up. You might know our Zoom account goes over all the time because the types of conversations we're having as we're trying to serve you. So I want to see if we can take some questions from the audience. Does that make sense in the last 10 minutes? Do you think we have time for that?
Yeah. I think we have a couple other poll questions too we might want to get the data from. But
all right. Annie, you want to pull up those Mentimeter questions while we get somebody with a microphone? And
I think we've got Chris Mines over here and Trish
has got a mic.
Somewhere with them.
So how confident are you that your project will be effective in the long term?
There. Dig up.
You're amazing, Chris.
There's that staircase again.
Yeah.
So with some confidence, some people not answering, looks like, if I'm doing my math right. I may be a liberal arts major, but I'm not that bad.
So
Okay.
it's great to see the level of confidence. And so I wonder
you have
if
a question. Yeah.
I was going to say, I wonder if that's indicative of also where people are, because there's some people in year 3 or 4 close to finishing.
Yeah, so
Is there another question, Annie?
I'll be curious to say how you'll know if your confidence was right in 5 or 10 years from now.
Because of your project, will churches in the U.S. and Canada be able to find the kinds of pastoral leaders they need in the future?
I do love this question because it's really tied directly to the aims.
Absolutely.
The proposal. And so maybe the question to ask ourselves, and I don't know if it's on the poll or not, is what you said, Joanne. How will you know?
How will you know? Yeah.
All right. Is that it, Annie?
I appreciate the one brave soul there that says
Yeah.
Two
now, isn't it?
it has doubled. But
We're going to, okay. Questions from the audience. Raise your hand. We'll get a microphone over to you. I'm a little blinded. Any questions?
Matt, while we're waiting for a question, there was one thing I wanted to say, and I didn't fit it in, but just to talk about the abundance of new things, even since the proposals were written. And so whether that is because of the work of the grant or because of other things that are happening, but a couple of examples, I think collectively we're talking about things like technology and AI in different ways. And some of that's an offshoot of Pathways Project, and some of it's just because of the world we're living in now. And so I think that sense of like there's a lot of new things that we're dealing with, but there are a lot of new opportunities that we're exploring that we weren't talking about at this meeting a couple of years ago.
Absolutely. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Brent. I'm from Western Theological Seminary in Holland, Michigan. I'm going to take this opportunity because you all are on the stage and also Frank is over there to ask a question about our current environment, our current political environment with the changes of accrediting agencies, Department of Education, and all those things. So my question is, do you have any insights, because I know ATS is trying to be very communicative and responsive to the changing realities that we're all facing. Do you have any ideas on how we can utilize the gift of the Pathways program to help us be dynamic in these days that we could not have planned for and the way that they're coming about? So not trying to ask a political question, but how can we be dynamic, because the Pathways project was instituted to help us look towards a future, one that we didn't know we'd be in, even when we started. So any ideas, things that you're seeing that can help us be dynamic in meeting our mission as we're all trying to figure out where the path we're being told to walk is changing?
Well, I might suggest there's been a couple of podcasts on the Good Governance podcast. That would be helpful. Frank has done some, and the team at ATS have been in regular communication about the changes in the regulatory environment. I would suggest staying in tune with them. Amy?
Just one thing that popped into my mind was, as we all are struggling with that institutionally, like how do we navigate this particular regulatory climate and political climate? Those questions are being asked among your churches and denominations in particular ways. It's kind of like back when we were all trying to figure out what to do during the pandemic and moving online, all of the churches were trying to figure that out as well. And so if there's an opportunity to think about supporting pastoral leaders in this uncertain climate, I mean, that's deeply connected to Pathways, right? And so I think just being mindful of, as we're swimming in these uncertain waters, so is everyone that we're serving and supporting. And so finding out what kind of resources they need from our schools, but what kind of support our churches and their leaders need as well.
I'll kind of let me tell you how much that's meant. I called it my roles were direct element. That were changing significantly in those days, and very similar counsel even then. With on the structure, tended to have us look more close in. There was a recommendation to think and stay with those. So thanks,
Right.
Thanks for that idea.
Sure. Great. Yeah, and I think it's important to know you don't have to have the answers, but even just being open to conversation and discussion and support can be really helpful.
Well, and students that will go into pastoral ministry, what happens within the theological school community models for them how they might lead a faith community as well. Like when I was a dean of students, it was so clear how we dealt with crisis had a direct impact on how these students went out and led in their communities. Such an important model. And I've also heard just some really practical things, like if these grants can help you sort of move away from things like student loan programs or be not as beholden to some things with that are moving up and down in the current environment. Can it help in those ways? This is the risk capital can also, which is how we often think of grants as risk capital, but it can also give you some sense of freedom in some of these spaces.
Yeah, if I can, and I'll close on this thought because we're at time, and if I've learned anything in church, it's don't keep people from Cracker Barrel, or whatever your version of it is.
Yeah.
Hallelujah, praise the biscuits. So that's a joke for somebody. Is Pathways is an incubator.
Mm.
And it can be used, as Amy and Joanne just mentioned, to incubate this space and help your school think through it. So this has been a really rich conversation. This is what I'm privileged to be part of. Would you thank our panelists and Annie in the back, please?
Thanks, Matt.
And Probably not during break because we're all rushing off to places, but if you have questions, please stop someone. We'll be happy to answer them the best we can. I have a couple announcements for you. One is we've got the peer learning sessions next. Again, if you have not downloaded the app, download the app. They're also on the boards around. You will find them on your phone or your tablet. There is a session today about leveraging superpowers. You will find out about the superpowers on the event app. Under the documents, you will find your school it's in alphabetical order. You'll find the room you're supposed to be in and the table you're supposed to be in. Questions to talk about will be in the rooms. That's during the superpowers. Team times as well. You will find in the event app under docs, you'll find under the documents, you'll find your room. The questions will be on the schedule. You can move to a time, location, topic that's most useful for you. And finally, checkout today. If you're checking out today or tomorrow, checkout time is 11 a.m. You can leave your luggage today at the front desk. At the front desk or at the event registration. You'll see the schedule on the screens. Our next session will be in the breakout rooms. Again, 10:45. You've got a 15-minute break, and then we'll be back for lunch. Thank you all. Thanks for your attention.
Great. Thank you, Matt.